I came back, and when I was overseas, I saw the need for mental health. I was one of the suicide prevention officers in our unit. Like, they trained 2 of us, and I was one of them, and I was like, "Oh, wow." So I found it very fascinating, right? And just being able to help other people was so fulfilling to me. I loved it. And then I started reading a little bit about the brain and how it works and how it affects, like, how depression affects the your physical health and your mental health and all that. So I was like, okay, I want to go into mental health. So I came back and I went to see my advisor, who he was awesome. He was really smart. He had a JD, and then um he had a doctorate in, I think, education, but he was also a licensed clinical social worker who obviously was in the mental health field. So he was very unique. And so I told him,
You got kind
yeah,
of the full
yeah.
package
And
there. Like,
so he
wow.
asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, "I'm not sure what I want to do, but I didn't like criminal justice. I want to help people, and uh, I'm thinking maybe something like this or like that, maybe psychology. I don't know." And he was like, "Oh, it sounds like you want to do social work, and this is what social workers do. You can do crisis intervention, you can do advocacy, you can change policy, you can work at the state level, you can be part of the legislative session," which I was like, "I'll never do that macro work, right?
Right.
Right.
What a well,
I'm not
yeah,
that
what a
boring
small
too.
world." And so he was like, "You can also do direct practice. You can have your own clinical practice. You can open a nonprofit. Like, there's all these things that you can do as a social worker, right?" And I was like, "Awesome, sounds great. I just want to do mental health. That's it, right?" Naive
Mhm.
me. So I went to Pitt State and I majored in social work, which put me behind a little bit. I had my daughter my senior year. I got pregnant with her. And so I graduated with a bachelor's degree in social work and a minor in psychology. So then I went to
Did someone tell you you couldn't graduate if you were pregnant? Because that just
No,
seems like
I
it's really
no, I
yeah.
did have people ask I did
Like,
have people
"Watch me."
ask me if I was going to take a break, after I had the baby, and I said,
Yeah,
"No, I really have to finish this degree now, I have a baby." And my professors, who are now my
Yeah.
right.
colleagues, they were awesome. They were like, Dr. Humphrey specifically said, "Hey, you can bring your baby to class for 6 months if, as long as she doesn't cry too much and
Right.
it doesn't distract the class." And she was an awesome baby. Oh my goodness. She was the perfect baby. She was
Cool.
a sleeper. She was just awesome.
Well,
So I took her to class, and then I was supposed to be graduating early. And I was like, I was gonna have a semester off before I could start my master's. And I was like, if I take a break and I'm home with the baby, I won't want to come back. So I decided to minor in
Yeah.
psychology. And I already had some psychology classes that I had taken. So I ended up just minoring, and I remember going to class with my baby and taking exams with my baby on my hip, just kind of walking around the classroom, taking my exams. And my professors remember that. For example, we just had a meeting for a new professor in history, and we had dinner. And when I walked in, Dr. Lawson was like, "That's her. That's the professor I was telling you about." And I was like, "What do you
Yeah.
mean?" And she was like,
I was
"She's
just
the one who came to take a quiz or a test 2 days after she had her baby." I was like, "Yeah, that was me."
yeah. I was gonna say you gotta be a living legend around those
So,
parts. That's
so,
the
Yeah.
and then another one of my professors from psychology was like, "Yeah, I remember when you will show up to class with your baby." So I mean, those are pretty good memories to me, and now that I'm a professor, I'm like, a lot of students don't do that, but I was
Yeah.
right.
so devoted to my studies, and I was like, "I have to do this, I have to." And I was actually going to stop at a bachelor's degree, and my advisor, said I was one of the outstanding seniors at Pitt State that year when I graduated, and he was like, "Hey, you have done really well, you should really pursue your master's." So I ended up getting a really generous scholarship at KU. And so I went to KU for my master's in clinical social work, which is more geared towards mental health. And so all my research was about PTSD and traumatic brain injuries among service members. And so I excelled at KU, and I was also like 1 out of 10 outstanding graduate students. We got to meet the Board of Regents, you name it. And that same advisor, I kept going back to Pitt State to just kind of visit with him and tell him how I was doing and like what I was doing with my life. And he was also my husband. Yeah,
Show 'em
yeah,
your
he was also
daughter.
my husband's advisor. My husband was a criminal justice major, so he had both of us. So we liked to go see him, and he was always like, "Hey, when are you gonna get that PhD? When are you gonna get that PhD?"
Mm,
I wasn't made for that.
Yes.
And so fast forward after graduating from KU, I went and practiced, and I went to work for the VA Benefits Administration. So my passion was with the veteran population. So I ended up doing that, and I was part of the outreach team. And so I did a lot of administrative work more than clinical. I didn't really do much clinical work, even though that's what my main area was. We would go to homeless shelters, and then we would try to find vets and then get them off the streets, get them connected with the VA Health Administration, get them set up for health services and then disability services through the Benefits Administration, which that's who I was under. And then we would also connect them with community resources. And then we have Veterans Court on Mondays. And then we worked, one of the women that I worked with who is now in congressionals at the VA, which is really high. She worked with survivors of military sexual trauma. So then I did some work with her. We were both in the same team and we will rotate and kind of learn from each other. And I started reading those claims, right? Those statements from all over the country, and then so many of them were so similar that I found a theme, like a lot of them were young women, single, and a lot of the perpetrators was our leadership. And so just became
Mm,
so fascinated with that topic. And one of the things that I've noticed, and no one has done research on this yet, but I want someone to do it, or I might do it next year. A lot of the sexual assault among men were from the Navy, a lot of Navy. Uh, so
mhm,
anywho, so I came back to Kansas. I lost my father and my brother back to back. So we came back to Kansas, to grieve
mm.
and